Okay. Does this microphone work? Yes. Why are you in the like on Slack?
It was just for less online.
No, I mean like this very moment. Like,
No, like I'm just like looking at my like I was pulling up my page, which again I'm still very confused how this works, but okay.
there's some prerequisites before you. Actually, I guess you could just get started on Colab. Go to collab.google.com. That is likely easiest. Can you also send me that link to Arena so I have the exact same thing as you?
Yes. Why is my thumb up so big on this?
Mm. Nonsense. Okay, for Ray Tracer, it's enough that you just run it in Colab. To start simple with code, go to collab.google.com. Co like in category theory and lab, like Dexter's laboratory.
.com.
.google.com. I mean, for all I know, collab.com will work. Really? It's just collab.
It said
Collab.
.research.
Oh yeah, dot research.
So I was asking
.com.
if you really were right about that. Nope.
You just got the order off. It's collab.research.google.com. See, right now I'm doing my own file management because I'm almost out of space. So I'm speaking from experience of how much it sucks.
What does management look like? Just deleting stuff you don't need?
Yeah, but more to the point, having to scan through stuff. And actually, I think as a set theorist, you gain particular appreciation of how sometimes it's easier to deal with a collection than individual objects in it, or even to define the individual objects in it, or rather not define them.
Still to decide what I'm going to do when I inevitably run out of Gmail space. Am I finally
I
going to
remember
bite the
when
bullet?
Gmail came out, and the space thing to me was like a few gigabytes felt mind-blowingly large. And now it's 15 gigabytes. I have more actually, just because
Like, obviously, 99% of those gigabytes are things, emails I will never look at again.
like your friendship style from the New York Times, or how to bake salmon. Aren't you vegan?
Just, yeah. I don't think, I guess that shows how poor MIT's AI is. They haven't figured that part out yet.
Like, have you ever had salmon?
Not since, like, childhood.
Okay. Failing New York Times.
Shame. Incidentally, the people at Taco Tuesday said you're a great cook.
Yeah. I got better during COVID, especially. Yeah. Do you have a GitHub account? Yeah.
I have an empty GitHub account, yes.
Okay, well, link it then. A handy trait to get in the habit of for software, especially new software, is before you even fully use it, look at settings. Like sort of scan it breadth wise rather than depth wise. One, because it'll just be like useful stuff in the settings, and two, often the settings give a sense of how the thing actually works in the first place.
I don't know how to link it, but it's called Elliot's Glazer.
I guess you're lucky that your name is that unique.
I am surprised as well. My
Because I'd
Gmail
be
account, elliotglazer@gmail.com, I made it like 2 weeks ago.
because there is no way that you would have just gotten it have your password if you were just named Elliot.
What, I could not find organization user or what?
That's uh, is me. I recommend putting a picture on, considering you're not gonna be anonymous because you put your first and last name as your username. You might as well be recognizable. Okay, anyway. This is Collab. Collab is a very easy way to get started with things. I have an account for it. I in fact have a Collab Pro account that I pay $50 a month for because it allows running more powerful machines. And it's not something you if you need a computation to run for like a whole day uninterrupted, you can really use because even if you pay them that much, it can still get interrupted. But computer actions tend to either take like less time than you can perceive or like a lot. There's some stuff that takes like 5 minutes, but that's actually not as common as you might think. start typing random expressions. Like, okay, here's a task. Make an empty list. It has AI, which will help you with this. This is some live reinforcement learning. Call it, well, whatever you want. I'm curious what variable names you'll come up with while you're still fresh. Naming is very important. Just like in math, the right name makes a program much easier. And if you have difficulty naming a concept, it means the concept is probably not so well defined, or it's like a mishmash of shit and should be broken into sub concepts. This is part of the overlap between math and programming. Okay.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I took Java a decade ago.
Don't think of that didn't happen.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And one of the biggest benefits of computers is that you can run things. I encourage you to run them and just get used to being wrong, because you should be used to being wrong for math anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, like hit the Shift Enter is the shortcut to actually execute a cell and create a new cell. So hit it.
Wait, what?
Shift Enter.
Oh, I see you myself. Yeah.
Oh,
No, it's in text,
instant.
obviously.
Okay. Well, here. Actually, Kit fix error, because I'm curious how good their AI is for this.
I wrote in English what I want to do, so it has something to work with.
Oh, well. Okay, well, here's how you do it. First, the comment, which is what it is, and make an empty list. That's not actually supposed to execute it because it's not even valid code.
Yeah, what's the common thing? Percentage sign?
Hashtag.
Hashtag, okay.
So put a hashtag in front of it. They're not going to put a space after the hashtag. Then again, the auto formatter will do that. So no need to develop obsolete habits. They'll still not work. And lists are denoted with brackets, square brackets. And
That makes sense.
so now make a non-empty list that has, I don't know, an integer in it. Another one, like on a new line. It's executed basically line-wise. Not exactly a line, it's really by a block, but those mostly correspond to line boundaries in a way that's not like that mysterious. Yeah, it worked. Generally, if something is successful, it's not going to print out something saying it's done or successful.
Sure, I didn't want to do hello world.txt yet. Okay.
Okay,
Print
well,
an empty list. How would I do that?
you literally type print and then parentheses. The general way functions are called is by saying the name of the function and then brackets. So it's like f of x, just like in math. That's it.
Lowercase epic list.
Yeah, this is case sensitive.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, print can take things of different types.
Right, that makes sense.
Now print hello world. For create the string hello world. Strings are marked by double quotes.
Okay.
If the string needs to be more than one line, there's a few ways, but we'll get to that later.
You said double quotes?
Yeah. Single quotes will work too, but yeah, you can use single or double quotes. That's not the case in other languages. In other languages, generally only double quotes denote strings, and single quotes are for characters. Python doesn't have a special character type. You're a real programmer now.
Thank you, thank you.
Also, style guide stuff.
Yes.
The variable names are not in Python are written in lowercase and in what's called snake case. Instead of capitalizing in between, you put an underscore. So
Okay.
the epic underscore list.
But you said don't capitalize?
Yeah, don't capitalize. The names of types is capitalized except for built-in types, which are just lowercase.
So I was gonna ask, like I'm used to from my Java that never happened, of writing object blank equals, but here it's like it figures it out because I use quotes.
That is a string, yeah, it has type inference.
I see. If I want to actually say
that it is a string,
yeah.
You can put colon string equals like this. Hang on, I'm gonna make my own repo for right now. Okay, what was I gonna show you again? Oh, right, the colon. It looks like this. Like greet colon string equals. See, I'm lazy and just use single quotes.
Okay.
But I have an auto formatter set up so that when I save, it should format it. Or I can run it manually.
That makes sense.
In Python, these type annotations don't actually like guarantee anything. It's not like in Lean where if something is given of the wrong type, it will just refuse to compile. Instead, it'll try to run it. It'll hit the point where it tries to do the operation. The operation will fail, and it'll give you a type error at runtime. This is avoiding things like this, which are annoying, or is one of the big benefits of type systems, and why more modern languages tend to have them. It used to be that you had shit like Java that gave you types, but also made you express them constantly, which makes the language so bureaucratic and wordy. Type inference has gone a long way to getting rid of that shit.
But like, I imagine there are people who still argue for the old ways for reasons similar to people arguing for stick driving cars.
Nice. Yes, there's some, though not so many anymore. Okay.
Like, I feel like there's some use to being saying like, yeah, I will run whatever you say, but also equip it with an AI that says, hey, you did something weird here. Did you mean to do this other thing?
Well, okay, let's look at Arena. Chapter 0. Click to see a summary of each page. Starting with prerequisites. Exercises. Okay, go to prerequisites and look at the Colab notebook they provide. Actually, it's Colab. Is Colab actually collaborative? Not at the same time.
channel.
Oh, this is no longer hosted on Colab. Intermediate Python.
Prerequisite material. Oh yeah. What's the prerequisite material provided by? Like you could just freaking link the page arena people if you're gonna say on his GitHub.
You can actually beat that change because the arena is hosted on GitHub, so you can put in a pull request and make the change. So go find the link and then make that change. And that will be your first contribution to code and to the community.
Fine. Okay, how do I do this?
Well, that's a good thing.
Sure.
Don't be catty.
No, yeah.
I would literally just look up Jacob Hilton GitHub. Maybe even free prerequisite. Deep learning curriculum. Likely that one. Yeah, it's probably that one.
Yeah.
This curriculum may be extremely challenging to take on. Blah blah blah. Prerequisites. Linear probability probe.
Okay, check. Probability check. Calculus check. Programming. I recommend getting to know Python and NumPy. All right. I guess I'm on the prerequisite of getting to know Python and NumPy. How do I pronounce that? NumPy?
NumPy, numerical Python.
Yeah, of course.
Mm.
Optional statistics check. Information theory. I need a brush with that.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, today for Python,
Yeah.
to learn some of it, you're going to mostly watch me do the ray tracer. You are going to type along literally every line, though, and make sure they all run. This by itself will actually be quite a task.
Okay, long. That's that tab.
Great. Oh, actually, then the prerequisite section is done. Ray tracing. Is this no longer hosted there, too?
Like laser. Joined 5 days ago. Okay, wait, so are we. How does this page work? Are we linked here? On this, I don't even like. What is collab? Is this like a collaborative programming environment?
It's not real time. We can use install cursor. Let's see if that one has. It's at cursor.sh. That one has real time. If that doesn't work, we'll just like keep along by. Oh, they changed the website a bit. Yeah, that's it. You can Also, you should talk to Dmitry Vaintrub. He's in that group I added you to. He studied logarithmic algebraic geometry, which is pretty esoteric.
Yeah,
And
that
yet,
is very esoteric. I don't. That's barely aware that's a thing.
his dad also studied it.
And my father started it. Actually, probably doesn't even. Who knows how long this thing even existed?
I guess his dad was sick of only 5 people understanding it, so he decided to create number 6 himself.
Position entering the AI space.
Yeah.
Many such cases.
Also, since you have this interest in Lean, I highly recommend whatever you implement in Python, as much as is reasonable, implement it in Lean also. This exercise will get you much farther than doing them separately.
Makes sense.
Because especially like following a guide written in one language for another language, that one is best done with a little more experience. But you can't just like follow along. You can't just type. You have to translate it actively. And
I know. I
okay,
spent many years learning hard things.
force of habit. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, you can certainly appreciate that your background's not like most.
Sure.
And again, I should be able to appreciate that because usually all the software people I've worked with are very surprised at all the math. Okay, open up cursor again, see if you're in.
They have this thing?
Yeah. This is just a little sample project. The next thing is to, well, actually run Python. And to do that,
Download Python.
yeah, which I recommend using this. This is a relatively new tool, which Python is famous for having a lot of bullshit around running it and managing it. Keyword is here's how. Follow its instructions and do that.
We need to protect your PC. More info. Well, anyway.
I hate that shit.
It's automatically putting software for you. Well, fantastic. Oh, continue. Yeah. Which version of Python should be used as default toolchain?
Yeah, that's one. 12 is the newest one.
Okay.
If it's in parens like that, that's the default option. And hitting enter should just, well, essentially input an empty string will just default to it. You could also type Y or maybe yes or no or N. or any title casing of them. Different tools will parse it different ways, but most of the time they have a common convention. Technically, can do absolutely anything at all, and it could, but that's stupid and it doesn't.
Updated, all done.
Well, not anything. It's limited by the operating system's file permissions to read, write, execute, or some combination. Well, there can be files that can be executed, you can't actually look at them. You can run them. More common is one you can read or write to that you can't run. And this is why people are trying to hack you, try to get you to like run a zip file, which is not actually a zip file. It's like the dot zip or dot
Yeah.
something. The file extension doesn't actually mean anything inherently. Like it's not even the interpretation of the extension doesn't inherently mean anything like with the dot. A file name can be practically any sequence of bytes, not even like strings, but like even lower level than that.
Let's say it was .txt though. Like, could I be hacked with a .txt file?
If it was executable and you ran it.
If I just say .txt, all right, I'm going to open up a notepad.
If there is a bug in Notepad, it's possible to exploit it, but usually it's fine.
Okay, so then what is the kind of so now for the case of a .zip, why would that be more exploitable?
Because zip files allow you to run executable contents, meaning like arbitrary programs. As soon as you can run one arbitrary program, it's all over.
Yeet. It's like, what is when my computer just says run? What does that actually mean? Like, I always think of it running as being like specific to a file type, but I guess
Because there is usually a default program associated with common file types because most people aren't psychopaths and they assign a well-defined interpretation to them. So like a .py file will be run by the Python program.
but
And although you could have a
.exe.
file that's called Python that isn't actually the Python program, it normally is. And so it'll run as more or less as expected.
So when I have a .exe then, and I say run it, what?
It'll just open probably the default program for reading them, which will be a text editor, which I guess is Notepad for you. It might now be Cursor.
No, no, I'm for .exe. Like I have .exe games, and the game just
Oh,
runs.
.exe.
Yeah.
Um, I think it asks the file itself actually, and the file some special information saying what's supposed to be run.
But this is why then a .exe is like a
Like
very good
.execute.
way to hack someone.
Yeah, exactly. .executable, and why they're infamous for this.
Okay, what about PDF? If some sketchy person sends me a PDF file and I say I'm going to open up in my say Google Chrome, what could go wrong?
The PDF could have a bug in it. PDF's a complicated format that, for all I know, allows that arbitrary code execution. The meta lesson is if you want to be safe on the internet, don't own a computer. Like, seriously, that's not a joke.
Yeah.
I've met some security people, and the really hardcore ones live like a fucking prepper. Like, don't own a phone, don't own a computer, don't be important. There's more downsides, I think, because I
To
don't value
be
my freedom that much. Or my privacy, rather.
so anyway, does this thing like let me connect to you or something? Like this one.
All right, let's see.
I'm 20% done.
Control Shift X. This is the shortcut for extensions. You'll want to learn the shortcuts. And well, it already recommends some stuff to install. Python. It's already installed. Jupyter. Jupyter notebooks are like a way of running Python that combines the code and more programming. Sorry, code and the documentation in a way that's not just like a hash marked comment that will render actual LaTeX and arbitrary HTML so it can look all pretty.
Yay.
Absolutely. Actually, this is it. What else do I have actually in my extensions? Let's see. Extensions are already one way. A text editor is way better than things like Notepad. Being able to use other people's stuff, including LaTeX support. You can also look at Excel files in here.
Maybe general reader. Yeah, there it is. One sec. Why does it say marketplace? What are those units?
Marketplace. I guess that doesn't hide it. Do you use Zotero?
Never heard of it. I have done LaTeX in TechWorks and Overleaf.
I mostly use Overleaf.
Everyone does these days.
Or on this thing with local development environment. There's a new thing called types that I like. It re-implements the relevant parts of LaTeX. With Git and GitHub stuff. And then that should fix it. I need to get Git. Look up how to install Git on Windows and then do that. Git is basically the main collaboration tool.
So then why
Like,
there's a hub for it?
yeah. GitHub is so successful that people think that Git was invented by GitHub, but it's the other way around. Git works perfectly well without GitHub. It doesn't even require a network. It works and was originally designed for mostly offline work, which is then pushed up to the cloud. But modern trends typically have developers like plugged into their company's infrastructure all the time, like bees. Also, if you want to learn more about lower level programming, I recommend looking at the Rust language. Typically, languages are created for different niches and they tend to be a good introduction to that niche. Yeah, wait, go back, actually. Okay. In this one, they're pretty strongly recommending to keep that option. Thankfully, Microsoft has pretty good support for Git because they themselves use it and are probably the largest Git repo in the whole world. Because all of their code is in one repository, which is called a monorepo appropriately. I'll also send you Grug Brain. That's very important. Grug Brain.golf. I want to see if Windows 11 actually did bring WSL improvements. If it did improve the WSL, then you're upgrading. If it didn't, then whatever. You're upgrading.
Fine.
Sorry, bro. I will also, in solidarity, upgrade my OS. Or at least download it. That was fast. It downloaded already?
Hmm.
I told it to update the Mac software beta, but apparently it already has. Alright, chat, this might cut the stream. This may take a while though. Do you know the Einstein summation notation?
Yep.
Okay. Well, it's probably using all the cores to build right now. Yep. This mine is. I'm also running some upgrades in the background with a meta upgrade tool called Top Grade. And right now,
What does that do? Like start
it, it
experts of everything or something?
it upgrades everything, like at every level of system, every something. So it upgrades all the Python dependencies, JavaScript, every language, the system tool, just everything that can be upgraded is. And right now, because it's doing compiling it from scratch for the Rust ones, it's making my computer work. Because it can use the cores in parallel, it is. And so the fans are on because every single core is running basically at full tilt. That does indicate I'm getting very good utilization. Most of the time, computers spend just sitting idle, like yours, for the most part.
You would hear my computer if it was really being pushed. And the times my computer being pushed are very confusing to me. Like there are times like it'll just start running. And I'm pretty sure it's because some of background anti malware thing.
Well, now you'll be in a position to find out for sure. This is also very accurate, by the way.
I feel like I've seen this one like 20 times. This is definitely one of the most popular XKCDs determined.
Because it's so true.
So true.
And it really is like they're always like a guy, and it really is like somewhere like Nebraska. It's never like a sexy place. You'll probably find this fun. Have you heard of Project Euler?
Yep.
It tends to be stuff in like the number theory direction.
Yeah, it's definitely that stuff more easily.
Go back to other conjecture. Do they still make them, or is
Read this again.
maybe a guy in Nebraska?
Yeah, something that's annoying is that now that I'm no longer at Harvard, we don't have institutional access to journals anymore.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, usually like it's possible to just email people.
Sci-Hub. There's this PDF viewer called Sioyek, where if you click on a link, it'll take you to Sci-Hub for it. It'll try to parse it out, figure out what it is, and find Sci-Hub. Also, the name just means 31 in Persian.
What does?
Sioyek.
Is that intentional?
Apparently, the author just likes this sound of the word for 31. He is Persian.
Yeah, let's see if this one is any free version.
Wait, if I find.
A paper linked in an answer some. Well, actually, from Joel Hopkins. He answered my math flow question yesterday.
Have you met him?
Yeah, of course.
I haven't.
We had dinner with him and Hugh, and they got drunk and argued philosophy for a few hours, and it was great. And then he tweeted about a problem I gave him.
What philosophy were they arguing? And what problem?
Well, if you want to find the problem I gave him, you can just Google Joel David Hopkins Elliot Glazer Twitter. As for the philosophy, well, the thing is, my advisor is like a hardcore Platonist. Well, excuse me, Hopkins will also say he's a Platonist, but in like the sense of a mathematical multiverse,
Okay.
which, as far as I can tell, is just formalism with extra steps.
All right.
JSTOR doesn't have a link usually. JSTOR just shows the first page. Lovely. I'm just like putting on these articles in me to control if the key sub extendable, which is like the hardest case, and I'm like annoyed that there's like apparently there's a lot of knowledge regarding these things that are just like not public, or like not published. Math Buckler is a fun thing.
If I had more money, I would just pay random people to record math professors just going off, or actually just anyone in the department, even the ones who are wrong, just as training data. Then that folklore can become useful. They just have to blather it out at the bar.
In the Discord, I have been blathering about some of my inside knowledge from you to some of the interested people.
Next step is like put Hugh and you in an MRI machine and just scan it out. No need for words.
Yeah, I got to figure out how does Sci-Hub work? Like, do people just like post entire journals?
I hope. Yeah, pretty much. Or articles to the point that it is the journal.
Well, I'm just thinking, like the articles I'm gonna be looking at are like obscure enough that I doubt anyone individually singled them out to put on the Sci-Hub.
Well,
But if the whole journal is posted, yeah,
well, name a paper. Let's find out.
Well, this paper I'm googling right now is called
the ground axiom is consistent with V not equal to Hod. And if it doesn't, you can just try Googling like the actual journal.
Paper pierce is just on ResearchGate.
Yeah, this is the paper, and oh, is that the whole thing? Oh, great. Where'd you find it? ResearchGate?
Unfortunately, I hate ResearchGate.
Yeah, I don't, it's what a weird website. What is ResearchGate for?
Research. It just looks like a scam website. It's not,
I know, right?
but somehow it's
Yeah,
not.
you're right. Here's the whole article. Well, convenient. Download full text PDF. Great.
I'm still gonna see if the JSTOR thing is up there. It's also on here.
What is?
Sciab. I literally just typed sciab.se and then I pasted the URL of the thing I wanted behind that's paywalled. Here it is.
Well,
And you can just hit download.
fantastic. So, what's the business model of journals again? Just sell it to institutions for some reason?
I don't get journals' business models these days. I think it's more inertia. A journal is such a raw deal. Like, compared to writing a book, like, if you write a book, well, you write the book and then you send it to a publisher and maybe they edit it a bit and then they print up copies and help distribute it and help market it. But if you write a paper, you have to like compete to get it. Okay, that part is like that. But then you give up the rights to any money from it. So it's like you write a book, but all the royalties go to them. You're not paid for it. You have to pay for it. And I don't think an author has to pay like a submission fee to send in a book. Or if it is, it'd be something nominal to keep out cranks. But journal fees can be pretty high, especially if you want to make it open access. Usually don't edit it. Certainly for math.
What's the current policy regarding archive? Like, if you have an archive thing and then you submit a publication, what happens again?
Some journals say that doesn't fly with them. Fuck them all.
Anyway, just control F. This was all just a control of one word. Find on page. Extendable. Classic. What's the other articles? Can look it up. Yeah, so next one is the lottery preparation by Hopkins.
Hi, everyone. Aaron here for Solo Tech.
Stop talking. Right.
Oh, this one's on archive page. Does it have a mention of extendables? Oh. Wow. References the word super compact. 125. I'm glad he has his priorities straight.
Hi, everyone.
Actually, I just did some programming right here.
What did you program?
And I use Rye for dependencies. They use a different thing. But it just goes through the requirements text file, reads out each line, and then creates a script that's just the name of that with the word Rye add in front of it to add it as a dependency, and it runs it in a for loop. It seems to have mostly worked. CMV, measure theory is boring and useless. Oh, also enable developer mode on Windows, which you can apparently do by hitting the Windows key and I to open settings. Oh, it's in system under for developers.
Make those adjustments after the OS update. 85.
E6. I wonder what's taking it. The download should be done. Wait. Hmm. Even getting started programming is unsexy because so much of it is just installing stuff where absolutely nothing happens. And at best, like parallelizing what you install. But if it's something big like an OS, you can't even really parallelize that. The magic of AI. It guessed that I wanted to create a ray.
Whoa. What possibly could have indicated that?
It doesn't actually get to see the left side of the screen.
How much had you typed before to figure that much out?
From the letter D and this entire thing, it just got in one shot. So I didn't type so much as a character about rays. A ray tracer is a nice task because it is, well, there's visual feedback. Good stretch. Actually, to make this more fun for me. Maybe not actually. Not a free one anyway. Wait, I think one of these is just for the table legs going up, so that should work. One outlet. Top left.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. Ray tracer. I've only ever written like half of one myself, so this will be fun. In our setup, the camera will be a point at the origin, so really it should be an infinitesimal aperture. But point.
What is the camera supposed to like represent?
An eyeball, but idealized as being infinitely small.
I see.
Actually.
So basically, the model is we are just that the image is supposed to be the intersection of this is a green point. There should be a green point here. Dot dot dot.
Mm-hmm. The screen will be the plane at x equals 1.
No, so no color, just
The camera will emit one or more rays with an origin and direction points. Conceptually, the ray of the map origin continues until it intersects an object. For now, we will say that a pixel on our screen should show a bright color if a ray from the origin through it intersects an object.
you can build
Okay.
any shape out of sufficiently made triangles.
At least in 3D, not in 4D and higher. The Cyprian Manulescu, I think, showed it. Your mom's calling.
Well, they're not really what manifolds.
Thankfully, this is just 3D. Damn, I've got a gap between my teeth. Okay. Otherwise, screen should be dark. To start, we'll let the Z be 0. And then work in the remaining 2. Okay. And for funsies, we're going to do 2 ways. We're going to do in lean as well. At least until one of them becomes too annoying. But let's have to make a new project. Like in that lean ray tracer.
Okay, so Z is 0. So right now we're just like monitoring this great circle.
More like the hemisphere, isn't it? Because it could hit to like there, but anything in the half. I'm looking for an actual sphere nearby. There, actually surprisingly close to a sphere. Check it out.
That's what I'm saying. Like the only thing that's going to be relevant when Z equals 0 is just this great circle.
for the camera.
And since brightness is not being modeled in the first exercise, so it's going to be a line segment, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So at data class,
Okay, some explanations. I'm gonna make it bigger. Wrong one. Well, that was unhelpful. This is the kind of thing where I ask the AI a lot if I was myself. But since you're not by yourself, a data class, well, what the at symbol means, these are called decorators in Python. And I would recommend making notes. At some point, this is going to come up again. This stuff will not stick so well. It's really just a fancy way of a function that takes whatever's below it as a block. Essentially, a code description of class. In this case, it transforms it by adding a bunch of methods automatically. For example, equality. It's like def eq. Actually, there. It would implement it in a more naive way, actually, where essentially two classes or an array would compare not equal with any class other than array, and between two arrays, they would compare equal only if their elements recursively compare equal. So it implements things like equality or greater than and stuff in a generic way. These functions allow.
so this data class is called ray.
Yeah,
You just named the ray. It's arbitrary.
yeah,
Okay, so you declared that.
yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much everything.
What in tensor as well? That's just arbitrary
Ten-
names you made up. Okay.
No, tensor comes from PyTorch. I quickly jump to the def there. That's the very handy go to definition command. There's also one to go back.
Mm-hmm. What are you typing about? What is this platform?
This is just cursor. The jumping,
Okay.
it's pretty common. It's just more fun to mess with it. Anyway, this is probably too detailed of an explanation. This is just showing how tensor is implemented.
I'm sure I was just asking like that. Okay, so that much was already a thing, but ray is something
Yeah.
you're defining.
Yeah. Tensor is an optimized array implementation designed by Facebook for the PyTorch library and provided by it. Usually, these optimized libraries, Python is written on top of C, and C acts as the base language, which other things can compile to as well. And then Python has can call functions from C as extensions. And there is some overhead of like turning Python representations into ones that C can recognize, doing the operation in C and then converting back, like conjugation. Actually, it is conjugation because you're essentially inverting the and applying some mapping, which is the actual transformation. Like in the case of adding two Python tensors, they're mapped into their underlying C representation, added together, and then returned as a new Python object. If the objects are really small, then the memory overhead of wrapping and unwrapping everything, all this bookkeeping will be more expensive than just adding the numbers and not worth it. But because in machine learning, the things being added are like millions of numbers at a time, it's usually well worth it to do some trivial overhead. Because it doesn't require recopying the arrays themselves. Their common memory representation can be used as is. Oh, as a set theorist, this is something you'll be able to really appreciate. Abusing what an object is, as in you have just like a sequence of bytes or bits, and you can interpret them however you want. And abusing this is a key to performance. Like really messing with the implementation versus the interface. Programmers like to program with an interface rather than concrete implementations because it makes things more generic and reusable. But for performance, you want to assume as much as possible about what you're going to be processing. And so your implementations of functions will usually be much more specific. This is actually a better implementation of the equality method than the default one, so I'm going to keep it actually. I think that's wrong. Answer. What's next? Implement the following make grades function. So you should actually type it out by hand and not copy because you're a beginner.
Well,
Mercifully, I'm not going to do that shit.
make rates. Let's see how my computer's.
Here's a very handy library, which is going to become relevant immediately. It's called JAX typing. JAX is one of the many array libraries. PyTorch, which is what this uses, is another. And there's yet another TensorFlow and another MLX. There's a lot of them. This library exists to provide shape information of tensors. Because even here, like when I say vec3 equals tensor on line 69, the tensor can really be of any shape at all. But the vec3 is supposed to imply it's a vector with 3 elements, so 3D specifically. But there's nothing that actually upholds that contract, that implicit contract. Which is like fine, because I'm writing the code and I won't abuse it. But it's these like subtle identifications of things that's like one of the fundamental sources of difficulty in programming. And it's also what makes code easy or hard to understand, the degree of locality it has. Like how much of the whole system you have to understand one piece. And ideally, each piece should be able to be broken up completely. That doesn't mean you should do that. Taking something and splitting it into dust in lots of little pieces is not necessarily easy to understand. Like the biggest barrier in coding is complexity. Like there.
I can believe that. I mean, I would often wonder, like, what is going on? Like when you're a dev at Google and their projects are huge. How does one individual get on board and do that huge thing?
By compounding advantages and tools. Picking projects that lead to tools that can lead to more tools and picking those chains and starting them is what can make an enormous difference in programming. Like I've seen the source code of people like Fabrice Ballard, who, if you look him up later, will no doubt be very impressed. But on the day to day, his code is not actually that much different from what most people can write. Well, most that I hang out with, anyway. But he's very consistent and he picks projects that lean into his strengths and that can compound. Things that tend to rely on some kind of signal processing using C and writing libraries that are interoperable. And writing up documentation and handing it off to other people to make the project bigger. That's the other thing. Like writing insanely clever code is fun, but most of the time is counterproductive. One, it can just be like too clever for even you like a week later. You just straight up forgot what this like means because it's no longer in your head and it requires all this implicit context to really understand.
You know,
And most
I've
people
had
have
that
no
problem
idea.
with my own math.
Yeah. And yeah, it's like with math. No one would like know what you meant. This is also why naming things well is so important because it lets you cheat with that one a bit. Because if you could name things really well and your names are right, at least people can like follow the structure of it, even if the bits are magic. Apex predator of the programmer. Uh, yeah, factoring. Actually, factoring can be taken pretty literally, which is better illustrated. Well, almost every concept is better illustrated in Lean.
The lean life.
Mm. Did I not lake in it? Oh god damn
Some sort of vacation. Vacation.
it.
Oh, it's feedback hub. How likely you recommend Windows PC to others if asked? Percentage has not gone up since I last checked.
Like new.
Oh, bots too. You were learning topology.
Oh yeah, I had that. That's an older one. I emailed Loring too, asking him if anyone's ever called him L2 as a nickname. He says no one has ever, but that he has thought of it himself. Bro moment right there.
Where is he at these days?
Uh, Duke? I don't know. Okay, factoring. You can, here's some type theory. You have sum types and product types. Sums are disjoint unions, like in category theory as well. Products are tuples, sequences, ordered lists. Python also has tuples. Basically, every language has product types, except for the ones that were designed as deliberate jokes. Fewer languages have sum types, which is a shame because they're very, very useful, and their absence is keenly felt.
Could you say again what the sum type is?
Here's an example. Here's a recursive definition of a list. The prime is just because the list type is built in and I don't want to override it.
Are you
Okay.
typing alpha?
It's just the conventional Linear.
No, how are you typing it?
It has Unicode support. If I hit the backslash, the editor
Yeah.
will know. And then if it's a unique completion or it's set, if I hit space or tab, it'll just come in alpha.
Cool.
A beta R, which is good because without this in Lean, it's part of the Lean extension. It's not in general. although you can make it in general. Anyway, each of these bars are really pluses, but no one would write it like that. That's too cute. These bars are pretty overloaded and mean a lot of things in Lean, but their general meaning is the same. It means that a list is this is a type of a list. So like list which takes an argument alpha, which is of a type, which means it can be basically anything. Well, nil or really the empty list. I don't like empty, I don't like nil.
So wait, just trying to
Yeah.
skip to the end. Is this going to be like a disjoint sum of the type n of the length n list for all n?
Yeah. You can unfold it using the classic expansion of the geometric series, which is pretty slick. But anyway, because of this like breaking apart through the inductive type definition, your programs, well, they take in each function takes in some input type and returns something. And because the type is recursively made out of sums and products, also some more complicated constructs, but sums and products already are pretty damn powerful. You can methodically break apart data types and match on cases to implement stuff. What stuff? Like basically anything. We can, in fact, like let's do def list prime dot find. There. Okay, so it takes a predicate, which is a type of a tuple, so a function. A is arbitrary. These squiggly braces they mean the same thing as the parentheses, except that the argument should be inferred implicitly. This is like an advanced feature. It's just that if the type it can be inferred from context, it should be. It's used to reduce clutter in certain things. Too much of it can make it like fucking magic, though, and it's hard to keep track of what's going on. In this case, because the type of alpha needs to be referred to make the signatures explicit, but what alpha is really doesn't matter.
Start on the top. What are you importing?
This file is actually empty, so nothing really. It's just when Lake is Lean's build tool, like it's a program made by the Lean developer team to manage Lean projects. It sets up a file structure when I run Lake new to make a new project, which I just did, which looks like the thing on the left. Where it'll import from here. Because these files by default are empty, the import doesn't actually do anything, but it's just there in case I do add stuff later. Imports from other people's code or other code rather, either from like across the internet or from just a different file, or maybe even in the same file but a different module if the language supports it. In Python, it's basically by file level. Inductive is Lean's name for a sum type. If you want a tuple, well, you can just use a tuple, but if you want one with the named fields, sure, like that. Option is a type. In fact, here's the definition of option. Optional. Okay, whatever. Here's the definition anyway, because it's really easy.
All right, now. Hello.
That's great, honey. These ones are almost magic theorems. The Guillemot French quotes really confused me too. Okay. There. List.find. Well, what do you think it does? Just by vibes.
I would imagine it would answer. It's designed for queries of the form: is this in this list? Or you put in an index and it outputs the thing on the list, something like that.
Okay, what does the line 20 mean?
If pred x, then sum x. And what was pred? Pred's a boolean. If yes, so if yes, then sum x. Else find xs pred. Okay. I'm guessing the boolean is like, is there in fact such a thing in this list? And if there is such a thing in this list, then sum x. I don't know what to make of sum x.
Look at line 10.
Sum type vel alpha option none sum. I guess
This is no easier to read. This is equivalent. Ignore the primes.
Sure. Non-type sum, then sum x else xs. None or some feels like it's related to zero or I mean, empty or non-empty, but I'm option, inductive option, alpha type. It's not directly related to. Doesn't have anything common variables with the list part.
Don't worry about the list.
Okay.
Just think of it as a self-contained thing.
Well, I don't know. I'm just having trouble making sense of this inductive formulation. So okay, so the base type was option, and then the inductive step I would suppose is this part about
Inductive means inductively defined data type.
okay. So how does this relate to my to mathematics inductive definitions
I don't know, what are they?
or recursive definitions? Is this supposed to be a recursive construction?
Yeah. In this case, the recursion bottoms out at just one step, but yeah.
Well, that's kind of why I'm a bit confused about what's being recursed here.
Yeah. It's saying that any valid value of this type is exactly one of these cases. Well, it can be none, or taken the line by itself, saying that the name none, the left in
Okay.
general left-hand sides of programming, well, right-hand sides are like usually expressions or values, and left-hand sides are bindings like names.
So
it's
this
like-
is looking for something in the list of a particular type. And
it's looking for the first thing that keyword here is the first thing that matches the predicate. As soon as it finds something, it will wrap that value in a sum and return it. And the reason it does it is okay. Now let's try to write it without the sum and none to see why they're
So
necessary.
what does SOME do now? So sum was
It-
defined
It
here.
conceptually just like wraps it in like a box of that name, and more for the purpose of organizing your program. Like it gets this val, which is the argument sum takes. Like it's saying to construct a value of this type, it has some arguments that are needed. You can partially apply things. Like say it took two arguments and you filled in one of them, then it would give you a new type that it's like the same except now it needs one argument filled in. Partial application or currying.
Mhm.
A feature I dearly miss in Python. Every non-advanced user hates it, but I love it so much. Oh well. Anyhow. And so in this bit, line 20, the predicate, wrapping it in some, okay, it'll give some of, in this case, alpha. Note that each of these alphas are fresh bindings and don't have to refer to each other. Well, don't, yeah. So it's just a generic name.
But like, okay, so at what point after you use an alpha like here, at what point does it become free again to be a different alpha? Is it like after like is like
This block essentially. A block would be this line, its type declaration, and then all the arms. They're called match arms.
are like what is the closing point of a block then? Like it's very very clear visually, but I'm not sure what syntax is starting and ending the block.
For that one, look at metaprogramming and lean for a very thorough explanation. But the short of it is, it would parse this line probably as there's a thing called a parser combinator you can look up later, where you can functorially compose parsers, which is very nice.
So
when it's be like something that, well, it would be the word inductive, which I don't know. Let's say for simplicity, has to be on its own line and start a line.
Yes.
As it does. Then it'd be, well, option. In this case, which should be a name, which is it would be an argument of a name. Usually each of these little pieces has its own dedicated type defined in the compiler to make all this easier. Then it would be a type declaration, which can have 0 to arbitrarily many type declarations. In this case, it has just one, which is alpha. Actually, this colon type is unnecessary. It is inferred anyway, but you can write it out explicitly if you like. So it can opt. It could have the 0 or 1 instances of that, followed by a match arm, and then the match arm. Well, what a valid match arm is would be defined itself as its own data type. This is also the going back jumping back in our stack, a data structure you're going to become very familiar with. There was some proof that used this stack in math that was somewhat notable that I found interesting because to mathematicians it would seem kind of esoteric, but to a programmer it would seem absolutely basic. But why like organizing code nicely is called refactoring because you literally are factoring in a sense. These like the correspondence of sums and products, like you saw how a list unfolds to this geometric series of like 1 plus x, or 1 would be the empty list, or a length 1 list, or a length 2 list. Because then xx or x squared would be a tuple, x and x. So just two values of the same type. Length 3 list is a 3 tuple, and so on. So you can do some arithmetic with them, including factorization in some cases. Like a different way of writing the same data type or something isomorphic to it. The biggest difference between mathematicians and programmers is programmers care about which isomorphism was picked, whereas mathematicians often are trying to ignore it, with certain exceptions. Which I guess you're in such a happy fate as to belong to. This structure corresponds to a product type. Like in C, it would be called struct, and it would be much more limited, but still. Like in C, there's none of these generic types. If you want a list of the, you need like a type of list of ints and strings, and you'll just make all of them, which is simple enough to do, but sucks and ugly. This is what led people to create generic systems as a feature that a programmer would actually want. That's it. Sometimes people kind of abuse generics and make the temptation, especially for mathematicians, the biggest danger is trying to model it like in the best way, whatever you're trying to talk about in code. This is usually not a good idea. It's often way easier to get like not just 80 but even 90% of it modeled in code and to just like give up on the last 10%. The figuring out how that last 10% of complexity, how it can be put into assumptions that are unlikely to be violated in practice is part of the art.
But like to make sure that that last 10% doesn't fucking break the code, you would want to then like something like restrict it. So like, all right, that last 10% we will just refuse to handle it, rather than just like pray that input doesn't come in.
Well, with type systems, you can restrict it, and more powerful type systems give you more in this vein. Lean is already like far along on this axis. There.
Your check.
Okay, my computer will restart in 12 minutes. Oh, wait. Starting. We are on the phase 2. Okay, this is whatever. Ignore the errors, they're not actually relevant. It's not for explaining this. This is if I tried to do this without the option type. Basically, if the list is empty, this will fail, and then your function would crash on the input. So it's not a total function. Because it's not actually, the codomain is not actually alpha. It's alpha or crash. Whereas putting in an option is essentially making this explicit. Except the crash option is now just the none name. And instead of crashing, it just says it failed. And this is how these things replace the use of exceptions. Python does not have this facility and instead uses exceptions. Exceptions are much more annoying because it's like you're running code and suddenly some one function from God knows where in someone else's code will just kill everything. Very annoying. And it is a big obstacle to making robust software that actually composes together with each other. So types are good. Here, yeah, instead of crashing, just runs none. Otherwise, these things are basically the same. Look through the list one at a time. In this case, the way it looks through this list is by recursively peeling it. Because you see, this cons x is prime. It takes this thing and it destructures it into these cases. So x is val and next is x prime. X is prime. Well, x is prime has a strictly shorter length than x's, and so by induction it knows that this will eventually go down to the empty case and will bottom out. And the type system is set up for this, and also there's a bunch of functions lean runs in the background. Like one is its termination checker as part of the compiler, checking for each function that it terminates. Because this is impossible to actually check in general. If you have something that, say, has arbitrary recursion, you just write the word partial in front of it. You can't use it in proofs, but in basically every programming language, every function is partial. And even if it isn't actually, but it's as if it has the word written in front of it. Because they don't have a termination checker.
That can make sense.
Yeah. Checking that things terminate in general is, well, I think undecidable.
Yeah, no
Use all
kidding.
sorts of here. All right, no shit. Yeah, but it has some default tactics. In this case, because it can. I think the term for this is well-founded recursion.
Yeah, it's a classic example, like of obviously ill-founded recursion, and it's obviously gonna go on forever.
Yeah, and so this recursive call to find will have to bottom out. This is a quote by Alan Perlis I like. Recursion is the heart of computation because it trades description length for time. Okay, let's implement a vector. Yeah, this is a bit more interesting. Okay, here's an example of like trading off some complexity, or rather abusing it, but in a good way. This vector has, well, it has the type of its arguments, which have to all be the same type. There's ways to make it heterogeneous, but in general, you want to avoid that. The complexity of everything explodes, and you can easily write like 5 times more code. Code sizes tend to grow like somewhat linearly, but with like a lowish factor, and then sometimes it'll grow up a scale and just like bloom, then another linear, then another jump over the life of a code base if it's successful enough to live that long. Like here, n is supposed to, in fact, I'll say L. Well, it's supposed to be the length. No shit. Which is some natural number. But I use the built-in array type, which doesn't store size information. So n is basic, or sorry, length is basically erased. But nonetheless, because I intend to control this because it's a ray tracer, which is essentially a top-down program, I control or can at least trim the input that it's given. And then once the input is in like anything that's on the mathier side, where you can make a sort of self-contained system, then things like this, invariants that need to be held up, you can basically hold up just by knowing them yourself.
But that's also like the kind of thing that is that kind of mindset that leads to like bad, insufficiently documented or clear
Yeah,
code.
which is why here in Lean I do this too. But to make this not a pain in the ass to use, there. So this is supposed to be length proof, which is that the values that size is what is like. It's what it sounds like. What do you think it sounds like? What is this bit? Besides the sorry mean?
Yeah, let's see. Structure, vector type, net, where values.
Line 39 and 40 are in separate fields. Like different
I
blocks.
forgot. Like, what actually is this thing? Well, what was the task you were handed?
Ray tracer,
Like, I know that much.
yes. Which one requires defining a basic vector type to define like points and lines and stuff by putting lists of numbers together,
Yes.
which is implemented on top of the basic array type. But because vectors can be added and stuff, you don't just like say they are an array. That's the kind of implementation and interface mixing that's not a good idea, because then you're really tied to how arrays are implemented, which sucks. And so the structure is saying that it to have a valid vector, you must have an array which is given the name values, and you must have a blank. Well, what is that?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm just too lost. Like, what exactly you're trying to achieve with any of this? When I see the output, I'll be better able to like reverse engineer what the different steps were.
Okay. I'll just tell you this one though. This is a value of the type of a proof of this proposition, that the size of this values array, or how its length, is equal to this numbered length that's given. And then this is saying a default implementation of said thing, which is sorry, which is a proof of false. Which is why you're sorry, because you don't have a proof yet. It's just a placeholder.
Why are we proving stuff again?
I'm not proving. This is like a sort of hybrid.
Yeah,
Essentially,
yeah,
because you were
yeah.
talking about like implicit assumptions in code.
Yes.
Okay, this is a hybrid in which the assumption is now actually explicit. It's right there. It's a code, and it is checked by the type checker. But because actually providing this proof in all sorts of contexts would be a huge pain in the ass, this is basically make it implicit again, where the default proof is just like to not bother with it, and it's just provided as a background argument that can be mostly ignored. Unless you want to bother filling it in one at a time.
So my computer's up to now.
Well, it's on. That's good.
So it's reloaded. Definitely a different UI. So some things have happened.
Does it feel any faster or slower?
Okay. Well, let's do one round.
Oh yeah, I guess you have the new Microsoft Assistant thing too.
It's like really like rechange like all the locations of markers and whatnot. Like, what is that optimizing?
I don't know. What is Crazy Destination?
A very hard video game. It's full now.
Okay.
Will die in a very shortly. It's very hard. Well, so far no running issues.
That's some good local geometry practice. International Falafel Day.
Ah yes, most serious holidays. Yeah,
Have you met Jerome Keisler in person?
She's still alive. I have not met him.
He's alive. Thank God. He's like 90.
Where is he?
Nothing. Wisconsin. He's retired now, I think, but he's like
I mean, I would expect that age. Classic. Yeah, I saw that story.
EA
Okay, so it seems like it downloaded all just candy. Okay, now let's go back to. Is there anything else I should start installing now, or am I ready to start doing?
Windows subsystem for Linux.
Something confusing to just see like on the official Microsoft page for. Yeah, all right, we get it. You want to use a different OS. Okay.
Actually, the compiler shows that it's impossible to write this function as it should. To make list.find. I forgot that panic actually requires that the type that is being synthesized has a default value so that the value can be given to prove that the type is inhabited.
Yeah,
So Linux and Windows. Oh, that was easy. Yeah, just do that. Just want no, just that. This is a nice thing. A lot of running things on command line, often like very short commands can do more than this entire page describes actually.
like just in here.
Should just work. Yes, you want to run it. Make sure to give it like every permission.
Oh, the permission. Linux, have my babies. I trust your judgment unquestionably. All right. Things are happening. Hopefully. Yes.
Oh yeah, Lean's cursor hover is very good. Look at this.
Not bad at all. Wait, what is type 7? But what is type 8? Okay, but what is type 9? I mean, my friends have a joke that type theory's proper set theory counterpart is the theory ZFC plus. There are only finely many universes. and also there's one universe, and there's also two universes, and there's also three universes, and there's also four universes. We are still at 0.0%. Wow, this is like a long time.
That actually is surprising. I would have thought we. Well, maybe it doesn't stop. To download it should be done by now.
Back into the corner. Left corner.
Oh, wait, hold on. Now it's a 90.
Okay.
Classic useless progress bar.
Oh, now that's all I can put to. Nice.
I'm crazy. There. Here's how you would actually like, since you wanted to see values, well, here's a value. You use hashtag and then eval. There's a bunch of hash commands.
Yeah, I just said hashtag was
This is lean.
commenting.
That's only in Python.
Oh, we're lean, right?
There's a great variety of comment characters. In lean, the comment character is actually not just one character but two.
Hyphen.
Yeah, there are at least 3 comment styles, all of which have like real legitimate use. This is just a single line comment. This is a multi-line comment. The one if you have 2 in front is a doc comment, and is actually the best one because if you use it, yeah, value, sure. There, get value. And you get value from using this because it makes your documentation immediately useful to you, which is pretty motivating. For how important documentation is, a shocking amount of languages don't have any built-in features for it, including Python. Doc strings.
Hang on a second.
Yeah, the
Changes will not be effective until the system is rebooted. So reboot.
yeah, restart it. I'm gonna grab a bag of chips. And in this case, this vector.get grabs the last element or the second. The indexing is from 0.
Based.
Most programming languages index from 0, which is correct.
Based.
Unfortunately, MATLAB doesn't, because they figure mathematicians count from 1, but mathematicians are wrong, except for combinatorialists.
And set theorists.
I remember in the early history of set theory, the axiom of empty set was not an axiom.
Well, it still arguably isn't. I mean, it is redundant.
Why?
Okay. Prove it. Prove the empty set exists. It's a one-liner.
All I've got is if I had a set that wasn't empty and I removed elements.
Well, we have that's comprehension. You can remove all the elements.
So what, by an empty formula or empty comprehension, you get an empty set?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think that was actually their thing either, though. Also, here's one. Is the empty set connected? There is a right answer.
It is.
There's only one topology because the empty set has to be open. So the question is it true that there is
It just depends on if you define connectedness as one component or at most one component. Like if we want to have a decomposition theorem, you'd have to say the empty set is not connected.
Yeah, exactly. It's like is one prime. Well,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just it is by analogy to the fundamental theorem of arithmetic. The theorem can only be stated nicely if we throw out primality of one.
actually, one of my proudest mathematical moments was figuring out a factorization for 0 in the shower.
Anyway, here's my stupid set theory thing I was telling you like an hour ago.
Yeah.
It was okay, so empty set is redundant by that argument. Pairing is redundant because you can take power set, empty set, and then do a replacement to get a pair.
Okay.
The interesting thing is showing that comprehension is redundant. So let's say I have a set. I've got a property. This property is satisfied by at least one object in X.
Mm-hmm.
Then how do I use replacement to build this subset?
Okay. I'm gonna kill this soon. My battery's almost dead. It's busy, I guess. Whatever. Back to the main show, folks.
It takes one sentence to prove non-empty subsets exist. To prove the empty set exists in the absence of comprehension, it's like a single page argument that uses all the other axioms. This is my instruction.
Wow. What's the new paper?
I haven't written it off. It's just like a joke I made to get on the grad. I think I'll make like I'll get around to start blogging and make a blog post on it.
You'll find your audience on Substack, at least according to the manifest. It's not surely higher.
Some people do my silly stuff.
This is a very useful library. All it provides is
Time for me to do stuff.
I recommend making it short because you're going to be typing a lot. Sure.
It's my online name.
Okay, well, that's good.
So I need to remember.
It won't show any. It's a blank, invisible prompt. Actually, it doesn't matter if I'm staring at the screen. It's not your hands. I'm going to confirm that.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
This message is shown once a day.
In this case, this library is useful because right here, the comment is the thing about the shapes. There's really be a flow to the pencil. These things are totally immune to spelling errors. So yes.
Sounds good. We're here right now.
For one and the same ones.
Such a good meme.
It's got the shape for it. Just the master Dr. Manhattan looking at it. Okay. So this is what Purple does. He makes a bunch of rays. Which was nice.
Okay, so what was what did you import to have such a nice thing?
One of their functions, render lines with plot language. Well, it uses plot light. You can get something like at least half that nice without much effort. In this case, is this function, which is 15 lines long. Actually, it's not even 15 lines, really. You make a figure. This is basically like a blank canvas. And then it sort of imperatively modifies the canvas by taking each lines and adding a scatter plot of it. This things like plotting libraries tend to be big libraries because yeah, graphics does take a lot of existing code and because it can usually be reused partially because it's so damn hard. Well, not hard so much as time consuming. So here you have plans. Looks like we're like rolling this thing. And then it just goes and colors over it. What the hell? Oh, in bold.
Okay, so I'm not letting them go to install it. How do I? So when I shut down my computer, will it give me the option of which one I choose between? Like restart.
Yeah.
So like if I shut down my computer right now and restart, like do I have both options to show up on my computer?
The Windows subsystem for Linux is like just the terminal or shell that's in Linux, but the rest of the computer is running Windows. It's not the same thing as a full Linux install. You still want to do the Ubuntu install, but find the USB.
So then just in here I just start Linuxing.
Pretty much. It might not look like much because it's just a terminal. But a terminal can launch arbitrary programs. It can do a decent amount in it. In fact, maybe for years, my text editor was just a terminal-based program. I still have a bunch of config for it if you're sure. And the text editor really actually works. Also, soonish I'm going to head to airport.
Same as well for food.
She has the thing.
What?
What actually is Vibe Camp?
No, Camp Ramble one.
Okay, so like what sorts of things like is it like what's like fun exercise I can do to get more like fluent with this thing?
With the terminal. Yeah, I think they actually listed one in what's his name? Whatever, it's in this list I'll send you. orders and form-fitting programming. Debugging, which you're missing a lot. To load the print statement. All the debug trace.
The math paper I wrote recently, which it's one of those things where it's like so heavy, just like making ad hoc notation. I just like trying to figure out like what's a proper presentation of any of this.
Jesus.
Look at
Yeah, I can't get a word about it.
look at this. All right,
Yeah,
first
I
line,
do these words in it. I have no idea.
there is nothing interesting. It's 15 lines of very direct, level set their definitions. Like, and sometimes I'm like, run out of like, what relevant English words do I have to say here as notation? Maybe learning competency principles of programming will help me figure out how to style this better.
That's the spirit.
The spirit. The title seems to understand, at least.
Easy.
Have you ever heard of global choice?
Well, yeah, but easy to me. It's not easy exactly. Well, I don't think most people have heard of the axiom of choice. I've also heard of the axiom of global choice. Less than half.
Fine.
Just like with axiom of foundation, I think less than half of them have heard of anti-foundation.
Probably true.
There's Zermelo-Frankel set theory. I've probably not heard of even one of the other ones.
Okay, but hold on. It just all set they without Frankel's contribution.
Actually, we wouldn't have heard of that one either, because we would think of Zermelo-Frankel, they just had ZF or ZFC.
What do you know? There was a C before C++.
Both are mistakes. It's like, "1983, the artist throws sure, can't decide that. Bolts everything he's ever heard of to C to create C++. The resulting language is so complex that programs must be sent to the future to be compiled by Skynet. Build time suffer."
What do you mean?
A brief and complete and mostly wrong history of programming languages. 1972, Dennis Ritchie invents a powerful gun that shoots forwards and backwards simultaneously. Unsatisfied with the number of deaths and maimings, he invents C and Unix. Yeah, that's all.
The minor inconvenience she didn't have any computers to run her code. He invents all the programming languages.
change.
I'm not academia. I've just been like prioritizing disseminating my knowledge like through talks and whatnot. It was the one I mentioned about showing that you can't have even weak saturation for exclusive acidic. Which is currently not in remotely proper paper form whatsoever. Yay. I'll eventually get something with that.
Mail migration test.
Yeah, I'm just sending all my emails over to the separate entity of Elliot Glazer, not affiliated to Harvard. Just put that there in a very visible way so that my co-authors would be less confused.
Co-authors.
Not co-authors, but a professor I was already sharing the document with. It's not sure at all.
Actually, if you can,
No, I'm a PSL author.
if you have any of your old academic emails, you can at least get the student overleaf.
That is.
I still have it. Yeah, I've been out of undergrad for years.
As far as I can tell, all the features I actually ever have ever used on it still works. Yeah. I think the big difference is co-ed first. Like you can only share with like one at a time, but it's fine. Should be not that professor again. Get that from me since I was actually if he works and extrapolate the signal like out a bit further. Over at 10, triple arrow 10.
Then you go broadcast.